Det jeg skal presentere en europeisk spørreundersøkelse, and I've been asked to do this in English, so I should do it in English. It's an European survey. Why did we do this? There are knowledge gaps when it comes to ME, and they're so large you could drive a double-decker bus through them. And one of them is that we do not really know what is the natural course of illness for ME. And when I looked, I could find 10 studies, and none of them had PEM as mandatory symptom, and none of them lasted for more than 3 years. And what we think we know about prognosis affects how patients are treated, and it affects access to welfare benefits and healthcare. And welfare systems, for instance, in Norway, makes assumptions about prognosis that most people get better. And we don't really know if that is true. And in 2019, we did a survey in Norway. We had 5,822 respondents. And we found an increase in the number of patients over time. We found that 75% of the patients said they were housebound or worse, that ME was long-lasting, and we had got 7,600 open-ended answers about what affected course of illness in a positive or a negative manner. And we wondered then, would we find the same pattern in other countries, or is this unique to Norway? So we cooperated with the European ME Alliance and repeated the survey in 2021 in all of Europe. It was translated into 15 languages by the member organizations, and it was spread via social media and emails and blogs. And it consisted of 18 questions. It took about 8 minutes to complete. And it's the first survey of its kind. Of course, there's some or a lot of things we have to say about anonymous surveys. We don't know if they're representative, and we don't even know how many ME patients there are in any one given country, which is another knowledge gap. There are different use of diagnostic criteria, and there are different levels of acceptance of ME as a diagnosis. And we may not have reached the very severely ill who are not on social media, and we will probably not have reached people who haven't got a diagnosis yet. And we cannot verify the information because, of course, it's anonymous, but we do restrict it to one answer per IP address. And we were criticized for that because some families had more than one patient and couldn't answer more than once. So, of course, it's possible to game a survey like this, but you have to run from house to house and answer from a lot of different computers, so we don't think that is very likely. So, having said that, I can start showing you some of the things we found. And we had 11,297 respondents from lots of countries. You can see the list of countries there on the left, and there were 10 countries where there were more than 400 respondents each. And I believe it will be posted to YouTube afterwards, so you don't need to take pictures. Or you're welcome to have the presentation as well if you want to. So, course of illness and what factors affect it. And the answers we got, I found quite scary in a way, because the top line here, you see the overall results from all of Europe. And then I have the Nordic countries below. And as you can see, there are about 70% who say that they had a course of illness with fluctuations at the start and then deterioration, or deterioration all the time, or large fluctuations throughout. And there's only a tiny, tiny portion who says that they have experienced continuous improvement. And also a fairly small portion who say they're stable. And of course, again, we don't know whether this is, what should we say, the natural course of illness, or whether this is a result of factors that affect the course of illness. We see, for instance, here that Norway has a slightly better result, and when we look at how satisfied people are with the welfare system and with the healthcare system, we find that Norwegians are slightly more satisfied. So we also asked about the trend right now. Are you feeling that you're getting better, or are you feeling that you're getting worse? And again, the portion of respondents who said that they were getting better was very small, and most said that they were actually getting worse, or they were experiencing large fluctuations. So what we very often hear is that most people get better over time, and I can't say whether that is true. All I can say that the people in this survey are not getting better, or very few of them are. We asked about support and help, and 5 was very good support, and you can see that no one reached above 2.5, so they're not very happy with the support they're getting. Family, other ME patients, and patient organizations were the ones that who gave best support. And the workplace, school education, health system in general, and social services were at the level either of no support or very little support. So then there's a question of what you could ask as well, is that what you saw on the previous slides, that people are getting worse, is that a result of the fact that they're not getting any support? I don't know, but I hope someone will actually do some proper research into this. We asked for how well they we asked how they thought certain factors had affected their course of illness. And at the bottom, the green are the positive things, and on top, the red are the things that had a negative impact. So caring for your family, your worries about financial situation, all of these were negative impacts. Physical and mental activity causing repeated episodes of PEM, and stress and worries were the things that were most negative. And again, this reflects exactly what we found in the Norwegian survey. We asked about CBT, both as a coping strategy or as a cure, because the approach is very different. And we found that there was a slight positive experience with using CBT as a coping strategy, but it was seen as very negative when it was applied as a cure. And the patterns we found in all of the European countries were remarkably similar. So here are the results on CBT as cure or coping from the Nordic countries. And, well, Denmark has a slightly more negative view of CBT as coping, but otherwise it's a slightly positive experience. But CBT as a cure is universally negative. And the thing is, when we talk about these factors that affect the course of illness, everything is connected. So you can't just say that stress and worries is worsening the disease, because what we found from the Norwegian survey was that you can see that there's a lack of knowledge in the health system, there's lack of knowledge in the welfare services, and many have family obligations, or even family that don't believe in ME. And this again will lead to incorrect or lacking information in the journals. You will get lack of good information to the family or to the school, and you will get a late diagnosis and wrong advice. And this again, distrust from the school and family and everyone around you, and an uncertain financial situation. And all of these together will cause worries and too much activity and PEM. For instance, if you have family obligations and your family doesn't believe that ME is a serious disease, you will push yourself far too hard to keep up. So none of these are isolated in any way. They're all connected. And another factor that might impact on the course of illness is the time it takes to be diagnosed. And the average time to get a diagnosis over the last 3 years of the survey was nearly 5 years. And there were many people in the Norwegian survey in 2019 who said that getting wrong advice before they had a diagnosis, for instance, about exercising, had caused them to get a lot worse than they would have needed to be. And there's a British study from 2009 that says that early management of the illness appeared the most important determinant of severity. And here's another interesting thing, is that men with ME are taken more seriously than women, and on average they get the diagnosis a year before women do. And Brian Hughes had a thing yesterday about psychologists in the 70s saying that ME was hysteria, and you can wonder whether that is still the way people view women when they come to the doctor with diffuse symptoms. They're hysterical, but men wouldn't come here unless it's serious. So, yeah. The time it takes to get diagnosis has varied over time, and Norway has actually, the period has become shorter. In Sweden, you can see it has become longer, and in Denmark as well. And it's now more than 8 years in Sweden to get a diagnosis for ME. So then you can wonder, what kind of advice are people getting before they have an ME diagnosis? Are they told to exercise? Are they told to just push through? And how ill do you have to be before you get the diagnosis? Another thing we found, which is worrying me a lot, is the question is whether early onset is a risk factor for severe disease. And if it is so, why would that be? And what we found was that the portion of people with severe or very severe ME was higher the younger they had been when they got ill. And that was independent on how long they had been sick. Some of these people here who became ill below 15 had been ill now for 20 years or more. So I wonder, again, thinking about what I said with the previous slide, that how you're treated early on is a risk factor for severe disease. You could ask the question, is it so that perhaps children have less chance to regulate their own activity levels? Or are they more pressured by family, by school, and so on to push through and to perform? And are they told that, well, you can do this, and being led to believe that pushing through is fine? So I don't know. I wish someone would actually look into it, but there's also another study from the Biobank in the UK that shows that early onset is a risk factor for severe disease. And I think we need to find out why that is so. Another knowledge gap. And one thing I wonder about is that whether do health authorities in all the countries in Europe really realize how serious ME is? And I don't think they do. In this survey, we used the scale based on the ICC criteria from 2011, which also is the basis for the Norwegian guidelines severity. And so we use something we call better than mild, which means that a loss of about 50% when it comes to function. moderate, which is mostly housebound, severe, mostly bedridden, and very severe, bedridden, and in need of care. And it's often said that about 25% of ME patients have severe ME, and you don't really know what that means because there are 4 or 5 different severity scales, and some of them classify housebound as severe, and some, like the new NICE guidelines do, and some of them say you have to be bedridden to be counted as severe. But here, severe is bedridden, and moderate is housebound. And having said that, even mild ME is a severe disease, which is really important to remember. But, sorry, what did I do? There. Severity. The yellow bit is moderate ME, the red is severe ME. And overall, it's about 54% who say they're moderate, which means they're housebound. And the severe and very severe are 18% of the respondents. And as I said, we may not have reached the very, very severe, and this could be a too positive spin on things. But moderate ME is severe disease. If you're housebound, if you only can leave your home with planning and care, and if you have to really pay for it afterwards, you have severe disease by any standard. And nearly 3/4 of the ME patients are housebound or worse. And that's really, really serious. And I can't understand why this is not taken more seriously by health authorities in any country in Europe. And ME lasts for a long time. This graph shows the year of onset for all respondents. And I made a cutoff at 1980, but we had respondents all the way back to 1960. And the median duration of illness was 12 years for all respondents. And you can see the blue is the year of onset, and you see there's a peak at around 2015, and then it goes down. That's not really the case, but that decrease reflects the time it takes to get a diagnosis, because people without a diagnosis will probably not follow an ME organization online, and they will not have heard about the survey. So in Norway, we actually saw we had one survey in 2019 and one in 2021, and we saw the shift of 2 years in the data. The orange shows the time of diagnosis. So you see it can take a long time from onset to diagnosis. And my last slide, I'm just going to show you a graph that shows the year of onset for the Nordic countries, and the graphs follow each other reasonably well, apart from Finland, which is doing something strange in 2017. But what I found quite interesting is a peak around 2009. And of course, this could be recall bias, because it's much easier to say I got ill in 2010 because it's a nice round number. But 2009 was the year of the swine flu. And there's another Norwegian study that showed that there was not any connection between the vaccine and getting ME, but there was a connection between having had the disease and getting ME. So the thing also that worries me is that, the number of patients are increasing. And you can ask, is this increase, is it because the people who got ill in 1980, they're recovered, so they're no longer in the statistics? Or did they die, so they're no longer in the statistics? Or do we see a real increase in number of patients? And from what I've heard from doctors and what we see from the Norwegian patient registry, there is a real increase in number of patients. And why? And if I were health authorities around, I would be worried, because this is a huge cost in welfare benefits, and if it keeps increasing, the cost is increasing as well. And you should think that giving money to research would be cheaper than paying all the welfare benefits over time, but that's just me. Anyway, this is just the latest of a series of surveys. We have done quite a few others. One is about, well, general satisfaction with everything. One about the welfare services in Norway, one about rehabilitation, one about children and their families, one about the most severely ill, and the latest one from 2019 about course of illness. And all surveys can be downloaded as PDFs from our website. So if you want them, they're all there. So I think I managed to do that within time.
Well, thank you very much, Trude. And